if your home is sitting, there's a very real possibility that you are in the middle of a price correction within your own market. The days on market is increasing rapidly here in Denver, and the days of pricing it to see what you can get or always coming down and then inching it down are over. In fact, I've changed my entire pricing strategy, and I'll talk about that next. If you don't know, I'm Jeremy Kane with eXp Realty. Thank you so much for tuning in, living in the Denver suburbs over on YouTube. Really excited about this one because it's one of those strategic talks that I need to give, and I want to get it out to all my people. And no, the market has not crashed. As you know, I always talk about equity being monopoly money. You're getting these, this information rapidly. You can click on a website and get your estimate, and you can go from there. The truth is that is not an accurate depiction of your home, because the person that's putting out there has not been in your home, has not seen the updates, has not seen the things that you have maybe let go. And so we have to have these conversations. So the number one mistake that I see sellers making and other agents is exactly that, pricing it at the start. If you overprice it at the start, you're in an uphill battle. There is no more pricing it and see what the market will do. Sellers will wait. Sellers aren't afraid, or buyers will wait. Buyers aren't afraid to lowball you, and it just kind of leads to having some sort of issues with the property, right? Because if it's been on the market for longer, and yes, the buyers are more aware that they can be more picky and choosy, but when it's offer time, they're gonna be like, well, they've been on the market. Do you think they'll take this? Do you think they'll take that? So ultimately, the longer you're on the market, because you price it at that top-notch thing that you're trying to get, the longer you're gonna sit, and the more that buyers are gonna have that doubt, and it's gonna creep in. So pricing it from the start is exactly where we need to focus our attention. So what I'm doing right now, especially heading into the fall and winter months here in Denver, is, hey, let's price it 3, 5, 7% based on that peak spring sale that we had. Truth be told, the market has always done this in Denver, right? As we go, it just doesn't come down far enough so that there's, zero appreciation. Last year even we had a small appreciation bump. So even at the peak, even in 2021 when things were wild, 2022, the prices would skyrocket February, March, April. Then as summer hit and everyone went camping, they'd kind of fall off a little bit, and then they'd flatten out, and we'd end with a year over year, appreciation of, in the crazy times, 10, 15, 20%, in more, average times between 3 and 6% typically in Denver. So the seasonality does matter. But in that 2021, 20 through 23 time frame, we would say, okay, well, this is what the most common home to yours sold for, square footage, finishes, land, all of that, garages, and let's try it, 10,000 higher because you have new windows or whatever it is, right? And we would try it 10,000 higher, then the offers would come in. It's not the case anymore. You want to take that tip top, understand where the spring seasonality comes, and you want to price it a little bit below that in order to move the property. There is no more sit, wait, and see, because here's the deal. If you price it at the peak, or maybe a little above, which some people like to do, it's not going to happen, right? You're not going to get any showings. You're not going to have any data. You're going to go for there. So why don't we do that, and why don't the small price drops work? Well, here's the deal. The small price drops inching down, some people are like, okay, 2 weeks, I'll lower it $10,000 every 2 weeks until we get it sold. Well, then the buyer can see that, right? The history is out there. The agents are looking at the history when they go to make an offer. They say, oh, they've dropped it every 2 weeks, 10 grand without, and we're only a week in, so maybe we should offer 10 grand less, or maybe 20 grand less, because it looks like they have a system, right? So there's things and tells that you can do. If it's like set in stone, we'll just drop it this amount. But the small price reductions do not shake the market. When you're setting up a search, you typically set it for $100,000, $200,000 range. Some people are like, well, I'm approved for 800, but I really want to stay at about 650, but send me those and we'll see, right? And so dropping a price $5,000 or $1,000 or $1, all that's doing is resending it to the same people, right? You're not affecting that much change. And so depending on your price point, there's an average price point drop that your agent should have, which I can give you, that will tell you what it's going to take to, likely move the needle. And that's where we're at. So again, here we are. If we would have just priced it, 3 to 5% below, that tip top shape, but we were like, well, my house is as good as that one, so let's just price it that. Well, now 3 weeks, 4 weeks in, based on the data and how we're doing it, we're going to say, okay, let's drop it 5%. So you could have saved a lot of heartache, a lot of in and out, a lot of, planning and all of that, a lot of rush by just pricing it right originally. Now, the next piece is, I'm not here to tell you that, these price reductions are easy. Absolutely. You bought a house in 2024 at the, kind of top of the market as it started to kind of, slow down. There's a very real possibility that you won't get all the money that you brought to the table as form of a down payment back. Is that okay? What are the other options? What can we do here to help you hold on to this asset until we get kind of over this flattening out hump? Right? If you bought or sold a house in the last 3 years, it's likely that you're kind of flat, right? You may even have to sell it for less than you bought it for, which means you may have to pull, depending on your principal reduction and everything you've done, you may have to come, the money that you get at closing may be less than you brought to the table. Now, if you use down payment assistance or a very low percentage down payment, this might not be an option, and you could be asked in the event you have to sell, whether it's a major lifestyle change or relocating or whatever, if they're at all possible, let's try and hold on to it as a rental. How much of the mortgage can we get covered? These are all things that we need to have a conversation about as, colleagues, essentially. If you're my client, I'm the agent, we're working together on this. We need to make sure that we're exhausting all these options, because it doesn't matter how much you owe on the property, how much you want to profit, how much, you can or can't bring to the table. The market is going to tell you what the home is worth, and pricing it higher isn't going to trick the market. I promise you that, especially right now. Buyers are picky, they're doing their thing. So if you are in the situation where you're tight on, finances and you don't know, what your break-even point is, you need to make sure you're getting those payoffs and doing those things. And then we need to remove the emotions from it and have a logical conversation about what this looks like. Can we hold on to the property? Can we do this? Because if we can hold on to it, through, maybe next year the interest rates are up, maybe the year after that, whatever it is, maybe we'll be able to come out on top. If we have to get out of it, how much money can we bring to the table, or how much money are we okay losing? But that number doesn't mean that that's what your house is worth. And so we have to be very strategic about this. And a perfect example of this is when I bought my first home. When I was in college, I lived in it for 3 years. I was graduating. I was like, let's sell it. It wasn't in great condition. The market wasn't, super ideal at that time. And we tried to sell it for what we paid for it. It didn't sell. That was the biggest blessing, and the reason I'm sitting here right in front of you today in the financial situation that I am is because we didn't sell that house. We were able to hold on to it. We were able to, turn it around, get renters in there, start to cash flow again, and ultimately we were able to ride the appreciation wave, that we talked about. And during COVID, I was able to sell that property. I was able to rehab it, basically flip it, using the equity with a HELOC, and then sell it and take that money and put it towards a duplex. So that was a situation where I would have walked away with zero, had no asset. Instead, I held on to it, I worked through it, I solved the problem, rented it out, and was able to make a profit and, basically launch my entire investment career. So however you want to do this, please let me know. Reach out. We can have a conversation, 100% confidential. Say, okay, here's the situation we're in. We're going to look at how much you owe, what that looks like, and have real conversations and real expectations. so that we don't have to have, these crazy things. So the real shift that I am talking about when I'm pricing is I'm pricing to get an offer, right? That's the goal. We need an offer. We need a buyer to come to the table and say they want to buy, and you to have, an offer that you would accept, instead of pricing to get an appraisal. I can get an appraisal on most of my listings right now. The ones that are sitting around, I can still get an appraisal at that value. However, we're not getting offers, so it doesn't matter. And so now, as an agent, I'm pricing to where I think we can get an offer, not an appraisal. Big difference. At the end of the day, it's monopoly money. Remember that. Equity is absolutely monopoly money. And, whether you saw it was worth $1 million and now it's worth $850 or whatever, the market hasn't crashed. You didn't do that. That was all, that was all a guesstimate based on the internet. So I hope this helps. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.